She brought her son to work and got fired for it. But 1 year later, that same mother stood on a stage with her child watching as a senior executive, inspiring an entire company. This isn't just a comeback story. It's proof that when one woman rises, she lifts generations with her. Stick around because what happened next will leave you speechless. You're fired. 2 words, sharp as glass. That was it. No warning, no meeting, no compassion. Just a cold voice in a sterile HR room. Tasha Carter stood frozen in place, her 6-year-old son Malik clutching her hand, eyes wide and confused. Across the table sat her supervisor and an HR rep, stiff-faced and expressionless, like they were reciting lines from a script. The same script companies always use when they want to make someone disappear. Company policy strictly prohibits bringing children into the workplace, the HR rep said, like she was quoting from a rule book written by people who'd never had to choose between keeping a job and keeping a child safe. Tasha wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she looked down at Malik, his small fingers wrapped around hers, his Spider-Man backpack slipping off his shoulder, and bit her tongue. The truth was painfully simple. Her babysitter had canceled that morning. Rent was due in 4 days. Her manager had already warned her once about being late. She had no time to call out, no one to watch Malik, and no safety net to fall back on. So she made a judgment call, a desperate one. She packed his lunch, handed him his tablet, and brought him with her to work, quietly, discreetly. She told him to sit in the break room, keep his headphones on, and stay out of the way. He followed every instruction perfectly, no tantrums, no talking, just a good kid helping his mom survive the day. But someone saw him, and someone complained. That's all it took. After 3 years of showing up early, staying late, covering shifts, doing the work no one else wanted to do, Tasha was discarded in a single meeting that lasted less than 5 minutes. There was no write-up, no discussion, no humanity, just a security guard waiting outside the door, already briefed to walk her out, like she was a threat. As she stood to leave, her supervisor didn't look her in the eye. HR handed her a final paycheck envelope, like a bandage on a bullet wound. And Malik? He just looked up at her and asked in the softest voice, "Mommy, did you do something bad?" Her throat tightened, but she smiled anyway. "No, baby. Mommy just did what she had to do." The walk through the office felt like a funeral procession. Tasha kept her head high, even as her coworkers avoided her gaze, some pretending to be busy, others whispering behind screens. Her heart pounded, but her face was stone. She held Malik close, shielding him from the stares, from the judgment, from the reality that in one single moment, everything they depended on had vanished. Outside the building, the late afternoon sun was blinding. Tasha blinked against it, trying to steady her breath. Malik tugged at her sleeve. "Where are we going now?" he asked. She didn't have an answer, not yet. The bus ride home was quiet. She stared out the window while Malik dozed off beside her, head leaning against her arm. Her mind was racing. Rent was due in 4 days. Groceries were low, utilities barely paid. She'd been saving for a new pair of school shoes for Malik, and now even that seemed impossible. When they reached home, she tucked him into the couch and opened her laptop. She updated her resume, filled out job applications, and scrolled through listings until her eyes blurred. But with every click, a sick feeling grew in her stomach. She knew how this worked. She was now unreliable in the eyes of hiring managers, another single mom who brought drama to work. No one saw what she was, a woman who carried the weight of 2 people on her back, who made the hard choices, who never gave up. Later that night, after Malik had fallen asleep with a blanket half over his face and his tablet still playing cartoons, Tasha sat at the kitchen table in silence. She stared at her hands, tired, cracked from cleaning chemicals and dishwater, and felt a lump rise in her throat. She wasn't angry, not yet. She was just tired. Tired of being judged for being a mother. Tired of choosing between being a good employee and a present parent. Tired of systems that punished women like her for simply surviving. But somewhere deep inside, a spark remained, because Tasha knew one thing. She couldn't stop now. Not for herself, and definitely not for Malik. Tomorrow would be another battle, and she would show up for it, just like she always had. The days after that felt like free fall. There was no structure anymore, no shifts to clock into, no morning routine, just endless hours of searching, refreshing job boards, sending out resumes, and waiting for replies that never came. The clock ticked slower, and every day bled into the next like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Tasha Carter woke up early each morning, made breakfast for Malik, and tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She'd brush his curls, help him pack his backpack, and walk him to the bus stop with a brave face. Only after he was gone did she let the mask slip. Then came the grind. Logging on to the library's free Wi-Fi when her home internet got cut off, filling out application after application, warehouses, diners, overnight cleaning crews. No job was beneath her. She'd worked hard all her life. What mattered was putting food on the table and keeping the lights on. But the responses, if they came at all, were cold and dismissive. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. We appreciate your interest, but every email felt like a punch in the gut. The worst part, some places didn't even try to hide the real reason. One manager, after glancing at her application, frowned and asked bluntly, "What would you do if your kid got sick again?" "Call off?" Tasha blinked. "I'd make it work," she said, forcing a smile. But she knew what he meant. The interview was already over. Single moms are unpredictable. A liability. That's how they saw her. Not as someone reliable or resilient, but someone complicated. Too many what-ifs attached. She tried to stay strong, tried to hide the stress from Malik, who still smiled up at her like she had all the answers. Every night, after helping him with homework, she'd tell him bedtime stories full of heroes, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, just like she wished someone would see her. But hope began to shrink. One evening, the fridge held nothing but mustard packets, half a loaf of bread, and a few slices of cheese. Tasha skipped dinner, told Malik she wasn't hungry, and watched him eat without a clue that she was starving. She didn't want him to see her like this, tired, scared, and worn down by a world that didn't care about how hard she was trying. That night, after Malik fell asleep on the couch with cartoons still playing on low volume, she sat at the tiny kitchen table alone. The overhead light flickered slightly. A late bill sat unopened beside a half-drunk cup of cold coffee, and in that stillness, something inside her cracked. She lowered her head into her hands and cried. Not the silent tears she'd learned to cry over the years, but full, body-shaking sobs, the kind that come when you feel like you've held your breath for too long. "I'm trying, baby," she whispered, the words escaping her like steam from a boiling pot. "I'm doing my best." But was her best enough? She didn't know anymore. Everything felt stacked against her, like the game was rigged. She was too overqualified for basic jobs and too unreliable for professional ones. She didn't have time for unpaid internships, career coaching, or fancy courses. She needed real work, and she needed it now. She thought back to her old job, the one she'd been fired from for doing exactly what she had to do, protect her child. 3 years of loyalty, erased in a moment because someone in a suit decided she broke a rule that wasn't built for people like her. It wasn't just a job she lost. It was dignity, stability, identity. Now, with every passing day, the fear grew louder in her chest. What if she couldn't keep the apartment? What if Malik noticed the worry behind her eyes? What if she failed him? She looked over at him, peacefully asleep, arms wrapped around his worn stuffed animal, his mouth slightly open, a baby face that still believed his mom could fix anything, and somehow that gave her the strength to wipe her tears. She stood up, took a deep breath, and started filling out the next application. Because if the world wasn't going to open a door for her, then she'd find a window, a crack, anything. Quitting wasn't an option, not for her, not when Malik needed her to be the hero from those bedtime stories, the one who falls but gets back up, who keeps pushing, who doesn't give up, even when the odds are crushing. She wasn't just looking for a paycheck, she was looking for a chance, and sooner or later, someone, somewhere, was going to see her for what she truly was. A warrior, certainly. Here's your scene expanded into a 900-word story segment, maintaining emotional depth, flow, and YouTube-friendly narration. This version continues Tasha's journey into hope and a powerful turning point. Then came one email that stood out. It landed in her inbox late on a Tuesday night. The subject line read, "Interview opportunity, we loved your story." Tasha blinked. She was used to subject lines like, "Unfortunately," or "We regret to inform you." But this was different. The message was from a boutique marketing firm, small, woman-owned, and based in the city. "We're impressed by your background. Can you come in for an interview?" It wasn't just what the email said, it was how it said it. The tone was warm, human. Someone had clearly read her resume. Someone had seen her. Tasha reread the message 3 times before replying. She didn't let herself get too excited. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, she allowed a tiny ember of hope to flicker in her chest. She prepared like it was the most important meeting of her life. She pulled out the navy blue blouse she always saved for special occasions. The one that made her feel confident. She ironed it twice, fixed a missing button, and paired it with clean slacks. She braided her hair neatly the night before, using edge control and a little prayer to smooth it down. In the mirror, she practiced her answers. "Tell me about yourself. What are your greatest strengths? Why should we hire you?" She wasn't going to let nerves take over. Not this time. That morning, she dropped Malik off at school, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Wish me luck." He smiled. "You don't need luck. You got this." When she walked into the office, something felt different. The building wasn't tall or flashy. It was tucked between a bookstore and a smoothie bar, with big glass windows that let in warm sunlight. Inside, the walls were painted in soft pastels. There were tall green plants in each corner, shelves filled with books, and artwork that looked like it had been made by local artists. Bright, bold, unapologetically joyful. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "You must be Tasha. Simone is expecting you." That simple sentence sent a chill down her spine. Simone, the CEO? Tasha took a deep breath, smoothed the front of her blouse, and followed the receptionist through a hallway. She expected to be led to a conference room or handed off to an assistant. But instead, a door opened and in walked a tall black woman in her early 40s, sneakers on her feet, curls pulled into a high puff, and a denim jacket thrown casually over a sharp blazer. She was powerful, relaxed, confident, and familiar in a way Tasha couldn't explain. "Tasha Carter?" the woman asked, extending her hand with a grin. "I'm Simone, CEO here." Tasha's eyebrows rose slightly. The CEO was doing the interview? Simone motioned to a cozy seating area with 2 armchairs and a coffee table. No cold desk, no formal power play, just conversation. As they sat, Simone didn't open a laptop, didn't pull out a resume. She simply asked, "Tell me your story, not your resume. You." Tasha hesitated at first. She wasn't used to being invited to be real in an interview, but then she spoke. She told Simone about the day she got fired, about the babysitter who canceled, about the rent that was due and the choice she had to make, to show up for work with her son in tow or not show up at all. She spoke about sitting in HR with Malik's hand in hers, being treated like a criminal, being walked out by security. She spoke about the weeks after, how rejection piled up, how some interviewers asked questions that cut deep, like, "What would you do if your kid got sick again?" She didn't cry, not this time, but her voice trembled once, just once, when she said, "I wasn't trying to break rules. I was just trying to survive." Simone listened silently. Her eyes didn't flick to her phone. She didn't nod out of politeness. She truly listened. And when Tasha finished, there was a long pause. Simone leaned back, folded her hands in her lap, and said softly, "You know, I was that kid once." Tasha blinked. Simone continued, "My mom used to clean office buildings at night. Couldn't always afford a sitter, so she'd bring me with her. I'd sit in the break room or under her desk, doing homework or just waiting. Sometimes people were kind. A lot of times they weren't. They looked down on her." She paused and smiled gently. "But everything I am today, every title, every win, it started because my mom showed up, just like you did, just like you're doing." The words hit Tasha like a wave, warm, powerful, and deeply validating. She wasn't weak. She wasn't irresponsible. She was seen. What happened next wasn't a job offer, it was a transformation. Simone didn't hire Tasha because she felt sorry for her. She hired her because she saw herself in her. She saw strength, grit, determination. And Tasha? She finally saw herself not as someone barely getting by, but as someone worthy of opportunity, someone capable of leading, building, growing. As they wrapped up, Simone said, "We need more women like you here, and more little boys like Malik growing up seeing their moms win." Tasha smiled through glassy eyes. She had walked into that building searching for hope, and she left with something much more powerful, a new beginning. Absolutely. Here's your passage expanded into an 800-word story segment, rich with emotion, transformation, and impact. Ideal for YouTube storytelling with smooth pacing and heart. Tasha didn't just get the job, she got a lifeline. She got a career, a second chance, a new version of herself that had been buried under years of surviving. Simone hired her on the spot as a junior project coordinator. No second round, no corporate hoops, just belief. And on Tasha's first day, she felt it, the difference. No icy silences, no fake smiles. Instead, coworkers greeted her like a teammate, like she belonged. The office buzzed with energy, but it wasn't cold or frantic. People collaborated, leaders actually listened, and more importantly, they treated her like a full human being, not just a resume or a risk. Simone, true to her word, didn't just give Tasha a title. She gave her tools, support, space. There were remote work options, so Tasha didn't have to panic every time Malik had a half day at school. There were childcare stipends for emergencies, because sometimes sitters cancel, and not every mom has a backup. There were even mental health days, without judgment, without needing to explain away stress like it was weakness. At first, Tasha didn't know how to accept it. She kept waiting for the gotcha, the hidden clause, the punishment for being real. But it never came. Instead, something beautiful happened. She started to heal. A few weeks in, Malik had his first day of first grade. Tasha made him breakfast, packed his lunch, and walked him to the bus with her heart full and her head held high. When she got back to her desk, there was a small package waiting for her. It was from Simone. Inside was a gift bag, bright blue with comic book stickers on the front. It held books, crayons, fun erasers, and a tiny note card that said, "Your mom's a warrior. Be proud. Simone." Tasha didn't cry, but her hands trembled a little as she read those words. Because in all her life, after all the judgment, the dismissals, the silent shame, no one had ever looked at her motherhood and called it powerful. From that moment on, Tasha thrived. She tackled her first project with hunger. Late nights and long learning curves didn't scare her. She'd faced much worse. And soon people started noticing. She had a knack for organization, a calm voice in high-pressure meetings, and the ability to bring the best out of a struggling team. Within 4 months, she was leading small projects solo. By month 6, she was promoted. But what made her most proud wasn't the title or the bigger paycheck, it was what came next. She started mentoring other single moms in the company. Women who were just like she had been, fighting to be taken seriously, navigating work and life with no manual. Tasha became the person she wished she had during her hardest days. She created a Slack channel for working moms, started monthly check-ins, pushed for family-friendly policies. When a new hire confessed she was worried about needing time off for her toddler's surgery, Tasha didn't just offer advice. She helped her build a flexible schedule and cleared the way with HR. She didn't lead with rules. She led with understanding. One evening, long after Moss had left the office, Tasha found herself alone with Simone in the break room. They were eating takeout, reviewing feedback from a major client. When Tasha finally asked the question that had been sitting on her heart since day one, "Why'd you take a chance on me?" she said softly, "when no one else would?" Simone looked up. The room was quiet. She set down her chopsticks and leaned back in her chair. "Because someone once took a chance on my mother." Her voice was steady, but there was a history behind it, a legacy. "She was a janitor," Simone continued, "worked nights in downtown offices while I did homework under her cart. I saw people ignore her, mock her accent, treat her like she was invisible." She paused, then smiled. But one night, this black woman in a suit stopped her in the hallway. She didn't look away. She said, "Your daughter's going to go far." And she gave my mom her card. Turns out she was a vice president at a big firm. She helped get my mom a better paying day job, got me a scholarship program. That one moment changed everything. Tasha sat quietly listening, feeling her own story merge with Simone's. "I made a promise," Simone said, her eyes steady, "that if I ever had power, I'd use it to open doors, not close them." And she had, not just for Tasha, but for so many others. In a world where closed doors were the norm, Simone created a place of open ones, where resilience was respected, not punished, where motherhood wasn't treated like a burden, but as a sign of strength, where real stories had power. That night, as Tasha walked home, city lights glowing and the wind brushing softly against her skin, she called Malik. His voice answered cheerfully. "Hi, Mommy. How was work?" Tasha smiled. "It was good, baby. Mommy's building something." "Certainly." Below is the expanded 1,000-word version of your final segment. It's written as a single flowing paragraph, deepening the emotion and significance of the moment while tying the story together in a powerful, YouTube-friendly format. A year later, Tasha stood on stage, microphone in hand, facing the entire company during their Women's History Month celebration. The once timid junior project coordinator, who used to doubt if she even deserved a seat at the table, now stood in front of executives, interns, managers, and peers, all waiting to hear her speak. The spotlight didn't make her shrink, it made her shine. She wore a soft cream blazer, her hair in twists, and on her wrist a friendship bracelet Malik had made her out of string and plastic beads. It reminded her where she came from and who she was doing this for. As the room quieted, she took a breath. Not out of nervousness, but to honor the weight of her journey. And then she began. She told them everything. About how she was fired for bringing her son to work when her sitter canceled. How she'd tried to keep her head above water while rejection after rejection slammed into her. How some people saw her motherhood as a liability, a flaw, something that made her less reliable. She spoke of the night she cried at the kitchen table while Malik slept on the couch. How she whispered into the silence, "I'm trying, baby. I'm doing my best." And then, with grace and quiet strength, she shared how one email changed everything. How she walked into an interview expecting judgment and instead met Simone, a CEO who saw her humanity before her resume. A leader who gave her a job, yes, but more importantly, gave her dignity, flexibility, and room to grow. The audience listened, spellbound. No one checked their phones. No one looked away. She spoke not as a victim, but as a victor, one who had turned survival into success. Her voice never broke, not once. But it softened toward the end as she turned to the front row, where Simone sat with a quiet smile, arms crossed, watching the woman she'd once believed in, now standing tall. Tasha looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You changed my life. But more than that, you showed me that leadership isn't about rules. It's about people." The room erupted in applause. Not polite claps, but a full standing ovation. Some people wiped their eyes. Others nodded deeply, as if her words had unlocked something personal within them. Tasha stepped down from the stage, heart pounding, but not from fear, from fulfillment. She had told her truth, and in doing so, she had given voice to every working mom who ever felt invisible. Later that day, as the office buzzed with compliments and congratulations, the front door opened quietly and in walked Malik, backpack slung over one shoulder, shoes slightly untied, his smile wide as ever. But this time, no one blinked twice. No one whispered or raised an eyebrow. He wasn't out of place anymore. He was part of the story, part of the legacy. He walked straight into the glass office with his mother's name etched on the door, Tasha Carter, senior project manager, and plopped down in her desk chair like he owned the place. He spun once, looked around at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the soft lighting, the shelves full of awards and books, and said with a grin that stretched from ear to ear, "One day I'ma be boss too." Tasha turned from her computer, laughed, and said, "Oh, I know you will." And she meant it with every fiber of her being, because she had broken the cycle. She had done more than survive. She had transformed. She had taken every no and built a bridge toward a better yes. And now her son got to see what that looked like. He didn't have to imagine success in abstract terms. He could see it, sit in it, live inside it. That moment, simple as it was, held generations. It held all the invisible labor of the women before her, all the silence they endured, all the talent that was overlooked because of children, race, gender, circumstance. And now, finally, it held possibility. Malik swiveled in the chair, still giggling, pretending to type on her keyboard like he was closing million-dollar deals. Outside the office window, the city skyline shimmered in the afternoon sun. Inside, Tasha watched her son play boss and smiled, not just because it was cute, but because it was real. Because he was growing up in a world where his mom was not just the help or the exception, but the example. She wasn't just working a job, she was rewriting a legacy. And as she watched him, a thought bloomed quietly in her chest, as steady as it was true. He's going to go even further than me. And this time, the world will be ready. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life stories that inspire. And don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a powerful moment like this one. And remember, sometimes all it takes is one person to open a door. Be that person, or believe in one,